There's this really satisfying moment in digital design, and it's when you take a simple, bare-bones blueprint and transform it into a polished, professional user interface. It's that moment where all the logic and structure finally meets the art. So, what's the secret sauce, right? What's the thing that takes a simple sketch and turns it into a digital experience that just feels intuitive, engaging, and honestly, beautiful to use?
Well, it's all about that leap. We're talking about going from the architectural blueprint of a wireframe, the raw structure, to the finished masterpiece that a user actually gets to see and touch.
Okay, so let's really break down this leap. First things first, we've got to know where we're headed. So what does high fidelity actually mean in the UI design world?
Think of high-fidelity UI like the final coat of paint and all the furniture and decorations. It's the complete visual experience. We're talking about the actual colors, the final typography, pixel-perfect spacing, and all the real components and interactions. This is as close as you get to the finished product.
And what's so cool about this jump from min-fi to hi-fi is that the core logic, the structure, and the function, none of that changes. That's already been figured out. What we're adding now is the brand's soul, right? Its visual identity, its emotional tone, and that all-important layer of polish.
But hold on, you can't just jump in head first. Before you even think about picking a color, you need a rock-solid foundation. You have to ask yourself, are my user flows actually working? Have these wireframes been tested by real people? Is the content locked in? If you can't say yes to all of these, you're not ready to build.
Okay, so once that foundation is solid, it is time to build out your visual system. And this isn't just about picking some pretty colors you like. This is about creating a systematic, repeatable foundation for your entire design style. Every single one of these visual decisions has to be intentional. It needs to reflect who the brand is and what the product is trying to do. This means defining everything: your color palette, your fonts, your icon style, and even tiny details like how rounded the corners are or what your shadows look like.
And from that system, a clear style direction emerges. You're making firm, confident decisions about the core building blocks of your interface. What do our buttons look like? What do our cards look like? How do input fields behave? This creates a powerful sense of consistency that users really feel, even if they can't quite put their finger on why.
All right, you've got your system in place. Now we get to the fun part. The thing that separates a good design from a truly great one. And that is the art of polish. This is where you elevate every little detail. And look, polish isn't some kind of abstract magic, right? It's actually a series of real, concrete steps you can take. It's a checklist, making sure your padding is consistent everywhere, creating spacing that feels balanced and breathable, and aligning every single element with absolute precision. It's all these little things that add up. And that really gets to the core idea here. Every small, obsessive improvement you make adds up to a massive jump in how people perceive the quality of your design. It truly is the sum of all those tiny, intentional choices. So let's talk about those details for a second. We're talking about micro-refinements, things like the line height of your text, the thickness of a border, or getting an icon perfectly aligned. A user will never, ever say, "Wow, I just love that button height," but they will feel it. They'll feel that the design is clean, trustworthy, and professional. Icons are a huge piece of this puzzle, and the number one rule, they have to be meaningful. They are not there just to look pretty. Their job is to communicate, and to do that job well, they need to be simple, instantly recognizable, and perfectly consistent with the rest of your visual style.
Let me give you a simple test. If a user has to stop and think, what does this icon mean? Well, the icon has failed, period. That's why it's almost always better to use icons to support text, not completely replace it. And of course, you got to keep their size and style absolutely consistent.
And the same exact thinking applies to images. They aren't just there to fill space. A great image can support usability, build trust, and create an emotional connection. But it has to be relevant, high quality, and optimized so it doesn't slow everything down. All right, so we've got our system, we've got our polishing techniques. Let's wrap this up by talking about the guiding principles, the rules of the road, and some of the common mistakes that you absolutely want to avoid. Look, if you remember just one single thing from our chat today, please let it be this. In user interface design, clarity always beats creativity. Before you ever ask if something looks cool, you have to first ask if it's understandable.
And a huge part of being clear is remembering how real people use this stuff. We don't read websites and apps like a novel, right? We scan. We look for keywords and buttons. A great high-fidelity design embraces this with a strong visual hierarchy by grouping related things together and by making the key actions impossible to miss.
And finally, here's what to watch out for. You ever look at a design and just think, wow, that feels busy? Well, that is a giant red flag, and it's usually caused by one of these common mistakes: inconsistent spacing, going crazy with the drop shadows, weak color contrast, or using way too many fonts. Keeping it clean is keeping it clear.
Which brings us full circle, back to the one question you have to constantly ask yourself as you're polishing that blueprint into a masterpiece. Your design might be visually stunning, but above all else, is it clear?
Like, share, and subscribe.